All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Eric Foster. It's August 19th, 2025, and we're at Erratic Rock State Park in McMinnville. And Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
First question, let's get things started. Why wine?
Why wine? I think wine has been chosen by humans because it gets you drunk. It makes you feel funny, and I think it was something that humanity just kind of sounds like they stumbled across, the production, fermentation of wine grapes, but in a bit more serious than just getting you drunk and making you feel funny. I think wine can act as a social lubricant, something that brings people together, helps build connection between people, as it can lower inhibitions, as they say, and so I think that it has served a pretty important purpose to humanity and civilization in those respects, anyway. But myself, why wine? It was when I first started in the wine industry. I was asked if I wanted to work a harvest. I was working at Momiji Sushi and Crepes at the time in Salem on Silverton and Brown, if you're familiar, quality establishment. I was working tempura and washing dishes, and then a good friend of mine who had worked with previously at Great Harvest, Swan Westby, he asked me, he says, "Eric, you like agriculture? Would you want to work a wine harvest this year?" This was in 2017, I believe. And I thought, sure, that sounds great. I just worked at an organic veggie farm the summer prior in Willamina, and that was a great experience. And so then I hopped on at the harvest. This was at Keeler Estate Vineyards, under the winemaker of Kelly Kidney. Working there with Swan, and there's a handful of other winemakers producing their own wines there at the time. Silas, Alex Clark, and Jacob Hale with Trout Lily. Nicholas Keeler was there. And there's probably some names I'm forgetting. I hope not. But so that's how it started for me. And it was a really good experience. Working harvest that year, the work dynamics we had, although it was many hours, it was rewarding, fun work environment, to say the least, and good people to work with and work alongside.
All right, we'll pick it back up there in a minute. Let's talk about before wine. Where were you born and raised, and what was your kind of life into school?
Born and raised in Salem, Oregon. Both of my parents were educators. So my father was an elementary school principal, and my mother was a kindergarten teacher, an instructional coach, later in her career as a reading specialist. So education was big in the family, and I would say still education is my passion in various contexts. So yeah, grew up in Salem, went to Grant Community School, dual language immersion, bilingual Spanish-English education, and I think that's very valuable, and I think it's something I kind of hold on to and still value, the ability to speak more than just one language in Spanish has become very useful. And then went through high school and all that in Salem, Schmidt Community College, when I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do afterwards. Being the youngest of five, I think by the time I was getting to making decisions about my life, my parents were kind of like, oh, he'll figure it out. You know, he'll watch his siblings, watch him figure it out. And then, but then once I did graduate college, and they actually sat me down and they asked me like, so what are you gonna do? You know, I was like, well, I don't know. You know, and like, well, you can't just live life flying by the seat of your pants. And I think I took that more of a challenge than advice. But it hasn't been too bad yet, I guess. But I've learned that yes, there is some merit to that, saying you can't just live life flying by the seat of your pants. Yeah, growing up, I guess in middle school and high school, I was pretty heavy in the youth group, involved with church. So the only exposure I had to wine in my youth much was either through the grape juice that was administered in communion every once in a while, and but rarely we drank wine. My folks, my family did. They didn't drink much. Maybe my dad would have beer every once in a while, or my mom would have a wine cooler, or maybe like a mixed drink if they were feeling really fancy. But yeah, so it was kind of surprising to see that trajectory develop and advance during those years of my life, when I started working in the wine and seeing like, oh, there's quite a bit of opportunity in this, and it appears to be a developing industry in many capacities.
What did you study in school?
So in school, I went to university. I finished university at Oregon State University. A bachelor's degree in earth science and oceanography, and that was a result of several factors made that decision. My dad suggested I should pursue engineering, and of course, naturally, I said, well, I'm not going to do that then, because hindsight is probably a good idea. You know, it was good money in engineering. But we'd spent a lot of time on the ocean, in the waters of BC, up around the inland waters of BC, and so spending time on the water and oceans was a pretty formative and significant part of my upbringing. So I thought, well, if I have to study something, we'll study earth science and oceanography, and maybe I can apply that to a route later down the line, and a lot of the curriculum was aquatic chemistry and chemistry involved, so that did serve helpful and advantageous in several respects as it translated into wine. Concepts of pH, alkalinity, reduction and oxidation processes as well. So it's kind of fun to make those connections anyway.
So you talked about your first experience kind of in wine, kind of coming kind of on a lark. Tell me about the work and what the harvest was like for you. What did you know going in? What were the surprises? What was exciting?
Okay, yeah, it's surprises, exciting. The work in regards to the first harvest that I worked, it was all very much surprising. You know, going into it at the time, I was still under the notion that like we were going to be stomping grapes with our feet for the most part. You know, after watching the movies that are out there. But what was surprising was just how much equipment is involved, from like pumps and presses and a lot of the laboratory work that was involved. That was surprising. The forklift was very critical. It was fun. Driving forklift it's a fun thing, as long as you don't make any mistakes, too many mistakes, which does happen at times on forklifts. But so the general work, the first harvest, I mean, the catered lunches, I think, was a top spot for me. I was like, holy cow, you know, this is real, you know. And then it came to the time towards the end of the harvest when they stopped doing catered lunches, and I was like, why did we stop? Why wasn't this going to be forever? Because it was good food, you know. You show up, and so we're eating like chicken, and not even chicken, like steak, asada steak, and rice and beans, catered, all that, and it was nice because everybody would take a break at lunchtime, not just the, you know, Keeler crew under Kelly, but all the other most of the other winemakers would also stop what they were doing midday if they were able to, and we'd all sit together and open a bottle or two of wine, and that would sort of be an educational experience to complement the work that we were doing in the cellar and in the winery, where we got to see, like, okay, so this one's really tasty. This one maybe not so tasty. This one tastes like wet cardboard. Why does it smell like that? Oh, it is corked. So that was good. Yeah, just good work environment. Also those years. Oh, speaking of people I forgot we're working with, Peter Dredge, Tasmanian fellow, quality cat. Got to see a bit of his method and approach to winemaking, and how he liked to jump into his ferments in his birthday suit sometimes and kick his feet around there. But we got to watch many different approaches to winemaking, which was fun. It was a fantastic experience, the first harvest. A lot more than I'd anticipated anyway. The hours, the joke that Kelly would always say was every day is Wednesday, because after the first week or two, you'd forget what day of the week it was, and we'd ask her, and she'd be like, "It's Wednesday." I'm like, no, it's not. I know it's the weekend. She's like, no, every day is Wednesday.
So what appealed to you about that, and coming out of harvest, what did you want to do next?
Oh, so what appealed to me about that, the work experience, the industry itself was very intriguing to me. You go around it everywhere, and coming from myself, from a family and person who didn't drink much wine, and then almost everywhere you go, people are opening dozens of bottles of wines and tasting them, and all these different ones. It's like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. We're basically professionals at getting a buzz, but treading that line. So that was interesting, and the land aspects too, where you connect the finished product with the land use and the management of the vines. Often very scenic places, much like we are here, where it's a clear day and you can see Mount Hood. If only the old Amity Hills weren't there. But it's a good thing they're there. Otherwise, we may not have this AVA.
It's just fair.
And then after that, why did I want to keep getting into it? I think it was when I learned that the harvest was really the hard part. After that, the off season, the barrel work was, at least at Keeler, where I was at the time, was quite a bit more laid back. We'd still show up regularly and get there on time and leave on time and put in the hours, but that was the hard work, and it was only maybe six weeks or so at that place. And so I think that's what was enticing to me was it's kind of a loaded at the fall season, the workload is, and it was fun to talk about too. It was something that people liked hearing about, talking about wine, and I was able to pick up a little bit anyway about the science and the chemistry. And then that first vintage was before I'd finished my degree, before I'd even actually started my degree at OSU. So I kind of learned the wine science introductorily, that's a word, and then studied chemistry and science and earth science at OSU, and then was further able to apply that to consecutive work experiences I had in wine at Keeler and then at Duke's. I think at 2018 made wine at Duke's and Andante that was with Kelly Kid and I as well. And so I think honestly the intrigue for me was part of it, just the eloquence. I mean, you're surrounded by all this wealth, more or less. People driving Jaguar SUVs with wine country plates. It just reeked of sophistication, and it was something that I wanted in my life. or it was alluring anyway. So that was exciting too. Keeler, now what is now Antica Terra, I believe. They have an observation deck up on top of the hill, kind of like this, and we would sit up there if the day wasn't too long, at the end of the day during harvest, and crack open a bottle of wine and do some more wine education up there. So that too was alluring to me, you know. But then you got to get to the work of selling the wine. You know, it's not just making good wine, because there's a lot of people making good wine, but how do you get your label or your process or your business to stand out and to distribute to people, because there's a lot of people making wine, is my experience. And so if you're just making basic wine, it might not stand out. You could put a cool label on it, a fun label on it, and a lot of people do. Peter Dredge had some good labels, some fun labels. Really big in the hip hop, that guy is, which is fun to see from an Australian Tasmanian man who supposedly had dreadlocks back in his teenage years. I didn't ask him too much about that, but I figured it might have been a soft subject or something.
Tell me about you mentioned obviously going to Duke's and beyond, and then on to Andante. Tell me about the process for you of learning the work beyond the first year. What were the biggest things you had to learn, and when did you sort of feel like you were kind of getting a handle on the work?
I guess just all the meticulousness, I think, of sanitation and treatment and handling along each step of the way. From the grapes, when, you know, they'd be picked, it's a hot day, kind of like this, and do you want your grapes sitting out in the sun getting roasted before they're pressed, or stick them in the fridge, keep them cool. But the sanitation along every part of the way, even though I think wine is relatively somewhat forgiving, at least more so than beer, was my understanding in regards to sanitation, just because like the pH is a bit lower and you get a little bit more protection there. But I think the biggest things that I learned, the math that's involved, like the specific equations. You know, you could just like throw sulfur in there, but that's really kind of sketchy and might not end well if you don't measure it out, or, you know, don't mix it properly. The barrel work too, whether it's keeping empty barrels clean through burning of sulfur wicks, or doing a sulfur solution in there. And then a lot of the facility stuff, I think, was a big learning thing for me. Glycol cooling and heating is very critical, and so I remember at Keeler, our glycol system would sometimes be temperamental in ways, and at that time I had very limited experience. So Terry was the guy on site who was he was holding it down, the whole situation, and he was, he'd be addressing everything. If there's a tractor, a hydraulic line that needed fixing, or glycol situation that needed fixing, he'd be there to do that. And so just the regular maintenance of things, I think, was something that I ended up learning a lot of throughout my work experience. Whether it's, preventative routine maintenance on the forklift to try and keep it running so that it doesn't break down when you need it, or what else? Geez, there's still so much. Kelly she'd try to like break it down for me so much, the polyphenols and anthocyanins and tannins and all that chemistry, and then I'd try to do more research on my own through Wikipedia and what have you about what is it, and I just found like that's a whole rabbit hole to go down, all that chemistry, which was exciting for me and intriguing too, that there's that much chemistry to take into consideration. that some winemakers do take all that into consideration too, when they're producing their ferments and their finished wines.
So take me through the next step for you then. After Dukes and Andante, where did you go next?
After Dukes and Andante, so that was 2017, and then 2018. 2018, that's when I started back at OSU. So I took some time off from wine during those years, from about what was it, until 2020. What was it, 2020, 2021? I was down in Corvallis, and I got exposed to more of the fine dining aspect of wine, and that was through working at Fireworks Pizza Pub on Southtown off of 99. Very, very small operation. Cob oven, same guys that built the cob oven at the Blue Goat in Amity. I think, is it still called the Blue Goat? Still called the Blue Goat. If you haven't been, go. It's a good spot. So I was working in the kitchen at Fireworks during that time, and then focusing on school. So I was working very much part time. And then what was it? It was 2021, I think it was, or 2020. But Kevin Healy was making wine at Keeler at the time, and then I get a call one day, and he's like, "Hey, Eric, how's it going?" I'm like, "Good, Kevin. How are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, good." And long story short, he'd asked me. He was on his way out. There's a new winemaker being hired, Benjamin DiCristina, who'd previously made wine at Evening Land Winery, Seven Springs Vineyard, good spot. Haven't made it up there yet myself, but I've heard it's regarded as one of the nicer plots across the valley for wines. So anyway, Kevin Healy called, and Ben, and Ben needed some help for the harvest that was coming up, because it was just him, and although Keeler's relatively small production, Kevin, thankfully to me, threw my name out, and he's like, "Eric might be available." He was able to vouch for me, so I took him up on it, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll go work back at Keeler." And so I was doing that while I just finished most of my schooling, but there was one class that I still had to finish, which I had no business being in the first place. I did not have the prerequisites, and it was a heavy RStudio based, like computer coding, and I had no coding experience prior. This was like a graduate level population dynamics course for conservation, way in over my head. But so I was working for Keeler under Benjamin DiCristina, and that was the year where we were having to treat a lot of the smoke taint from previous wines, which had affected so many bottlings, and we were able to mitigate much of that through reverse osmosis and producing minimal skin contact. I don't think they produced any real Pinot Noirs that year. Maybe they did, I forget, honestly. But that was a big learning curve, honestly, dealing with the smoke taint of 2020. And I think luckily I missed that vintage, 2020, even though we were kind of still dealing with the repercussions later that year and leading up to the harvest of 2021. I was kind of glad not to be a part of that, just because it was very strong tastes can be left over in some of those wines. So that was a big learning experience about what guaiacol is, the compound responsible for that, and how it concentrates, how it may not express itself immediately, but later down the line and bottle it can come out and pick up and just taste like an ashtray, and nobody really wants to drink that. So after that, that was 2021. I worked that year, and that was a good experience. That was also during COVID. So being in a in a facility where there's many handfuls of winemakers working and dealing with health and safety protocol. One of the winemakers, one of their kids was immunocompromised, so he was very aware and attentive to the transmission of COVID in places. So that was a concern. But coming from working at Fireworks Pizza Pub, and also during quarantine where we'd have to wear masks and we're like sweating in the kitchens, I was like, this is nothing comparatively not bad at all. So I worked there 2021 through up into 2022, producing wines, working alongside Ben and those guys. But then in 2022, I had an opportunity to hop on a fishing boat. One of my roommates in Corvallis was from Alaska, Cordova, Alaska. He was from, and his brother drove tugboats down there, not down there, up there, and he'd just picked up a salmon tender, and so he, kind of dropped a line. He's like, "Hey, if you're interested in working out there this summer," and so I let Ben know early in the spring that this might be a thing that I'd be doing. And so he tells me, he's like, "Okay, just give me some forenotice before you do, so I can try to get, something lined up and get another hand in the operation." It ended up going. I thought like that ship had sailed. Like May came, June came, and I was like, okay, well, we're doing this. And then early June, I get a call from the brother of my roommate, who's the skipper of the boat, asking if I'd be able to jump up there for the salmon season on Bristol Bay, working on a tender. And I was like, sure, that, I might be able to swing that. I'd have to check with my boss, and when he's on the phone talking to me, he's like, if you can get up here, in the next 10 days, that'd be great. If next week will be better, but if you can get here in 3 days, that'd be awesome. So every year, this is sooner and sooner and sooner. So then I had to have that conversation with Ben in the winery. I told him like this may be a thing for me, and I kind of want to do this. Could be a good opportunity because you can make decent money on a fishing boat, even as a deckhand in your first year, and even as we were just on a tender. We weren't actually doing the fishing, but just transporting fish and receiving. So I think that was a bit of a shock to Ben. Even though I'd given him some forenotice, it kind of fell off the radar for him. And then before I left, we sat down. And he's like, "Can I guarantee you to come back for harvest? Like summer work shouldn't be that bad." It sounded like he could take care of it, but so I guaranteed that I'd be able to come back for harvest and work there, which was nice for me. Because it was like, yeah, I'd have something to come back to. So we do the fishing thing. It's great. It was a great time. Some spooky moments, but nobody got too hurt. And then right as we're wrapping up the season and beginning our transit back around the peninsula, and then I'm about to fly back, I call Ben and I shoot him an email and ask, just to see like, where are we at? Are we going to hit the ground running when I return? Because this is, I think, mid-late August at the time. And then Ben gets back to me. He's like, "Oh shoot, I meant to tell you a while ago, but Craig Keeler, he had gotten antsy being nobody at the winery, and I guess Ben had taken a vacation or something, and ended up hiring somebody else. So my, that plan rapidly fell off for me. So here I am on the way back from Alaska from fishing. I got a little bit of money in my pocket and now a little bit of time on my hands. And so I thought, well, shoot, I'm gonna go visit my buddy in Berlin. He'd moved to Berlin in 2018, and I've always wanted to go visit him and go see what's going on over there. Because a good friend of mine just moved over there to start cooking in kitchens, just to get out of America, I guess, and emigrate and experience Berlin. So it was kind of a perfect opportunity for me to go blow all my money I'd just earned in Berlin. But that was a good experience anyway. It was a great time. And it helped having money because I could actually spend time and go. So I got to go to Berlin and I actually got to try some wines. I learned what an Aperol Spritz was. Changed my life. Recently just learned of a Campari Spritz, so that should be even more. I haven't tried it yet, but looking forward to that. So then came back from Berlin, ended up putting in and getting hired on at the Cozy Taberna in Salem, another fine dining experience to put under my belt. And there I was working in the pantry, so I was just doing desserts and salads, nothing crazy. But to work under Chef Brittany Armenta was a real positive experience because you got to see the focus, the dedication, the nuance and almost the artistry involved that she applied to the menu, to the plating, to the professionalism of the line. I worked at the Cozy Taberna over that winter until about March of 2023, where I then applied to work at Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for the Willamette Wildlife Mitigation Program out of Adair Village, just north of Corvallis. And that was so I did that in 2023 from about April through September or so. And that was a really good experience for me because ecology, restoration has always been something that was important to me. The preservation of natural areas in an ecologically sustainable manner is something that is I think important and I care a lot about. And that program was neat because it exposed me to more about oak savanna, what modern large-scale conservation looks like, getting to read through the management plans, how all these things come to be, and the structure of that. So that was a great experience for me, and getting to work alongside the tribes as well. A lot of the tribes were part of that. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, Siletz, and Warm Springs were all very much so part of that conservation program, mitigation program, if you will. And so to be able to work for them and work alongside them as well, performing habitat monitoring, and to see how the tribes performed habitat conservation, restoration, versus how maybe like Greenbelt Land Trust or the Nature Conservancy perform different perhaps focuses or approaches. Definitely, different contexts they would have, which is fun. So I got to learn a lot there about a lot more of the native species, culturally significant species, first foods, and the communities that are oriented and a part of those lands and that kind of rehabilitation. As that program was a little bit of kind of a small part of the indigenous tribal communities trying to get their land back, and which that program was advantageous because the Bonneville Power Administration basically footed the bill for the title and deed of the land for it to be conserved in perpetuity, which is cool. And of course that whole program is in response to the damming of the Columbia, which has its own problems, but but at least there's mitigated lands for conservation involved. But that summer also meant a lot of poison oak for me. So, yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
So what came next?
So after the ODFW work, it was a seasonal position, and so I didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. I thought, well, I have recent experience in wine. I'll browse the was it Oregon Wine Jobs or winejobs.com to see what was going on, because I heard that's a reputable source for wine work in the area. And I'd responded to an ad from Left Coast Cellars for a cellar operations position, which I thought, I could stand a shot at this. Sounded a lot like the work we did at Keeler, and it was a year-round opportunity, it sounded like. And so I'd applied for that. Ended up hearing back and got invited over for an interview. And so we scheduled an interview to meet up at Left Coast and to check out the winery. That same day, I'd had a meeting in traffic court in Polk County for a citation I got for passing a hay truck on 99, which I tried to fight. I tried to fight to the moon and back, but apparently the law they hit you with the book sometimes. So I came from traffic court, and then we were going to do the interview, and I started getting kind of cold feet about it after kind of working a little bit in habitat restoration and thinking like this is something I'd like to continue more of. That as I was going to the interview, like I was like, do I want to do this? I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to like work back in wine again. And so I turned around. I got to the gate and I saw the gate was locked to get in. So I was like, well, shoot, like the gate's not open. I will take that as my sign to turn around. So I turned around, ended up getting a call from Joe, right, the winemaker. He's like, hey, where'd you go? About our interview. So I doubled back. We met up, and we talked about that. He briefed me, and he showed me the facilities, and I told him I wasn't sure if I was able to commit to a full-time position in wine as cellar operations, as I still felt like more of my focus and interest and passion was tailored more towards habitat restoration and natural areas conservation, specifically as I'm familiar and grew up in the Willamette Valley, the rehabilitation of oak savanna ecosystems. And that was something I was kind of jazzed about getting more involved in. So he asked me, well, how would you like to work a harvest and then, play it from there? And I was like, it sounds like a great idea. So I worked the harvest at Left Coast in 2023, working with Joe and Gabby was the assistant winemaker at the time, and Ben Holland as the cellar master. And that was it was a good experience. It was a lot larger facility than I'd experienced working on beforehand. The press itself was massive, highly automated, which was pretty impressive to me too. But it was exciting to be a part of working in a larger facility, and it helped that the estate, Left Coast Estates, they had and they still do dedicate significant portion of their land to oak habitat and restoration, which I thought that was neat. And I was like, well, okay, well, at least I can get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's it's not all vines. Because growing up in the Willamette Valley, a lot of the vines, even though many were planted in 50s or 70s and 80s before I was born, you see a lot more growing up and a lot more getting planted, and and here I am thinking like I want to see more oak savanna, not more Vitis vinifera. So I was to say it made it more palatable working for a place where they were, they had the NRCS grant to rehabilitate the oak savannah and apply conservation ethics to their lands. And I thought that was really neat, and I still do think it's really neat. And Keeler did that as well at Keeler, which was really cool to see. I think to see that focus applied to the native ecosystems and trying to maintain something for the animals, I guess.
So what about after that harvest?
After that harvest, what did I do after that harvest? 2023, I took some time off. Went to elk hunting with my brother out in Eastern Oregon. Had some time. I think I picked up a little bit of odd jobs, and then Joe approached me in December or January, I want to say, and apparently Gabby had decided that she'd had a change of heart about her pursuit and her role in the wine industry. She'd been in the wine industry for I don't know how many years, but she's very good at it, very, very professional. She would climb up the ladders, these like 15 plus foot ladders, minimal safety at times, but she's just like running up these ladders, and I'm up there every time I climb them, I'm like shaking and my hands are sweating, I'm like, Gabby, how do you do it? Like, how do you not think about falling off? And she's like, oh, you just tell yourself to forget about it. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. But so Gabby had a change of, she had something come up or something, so she went to go visit with her family for a bit and take some serious consideration, I guess, if she wanted to keep working in the wine industry at the capacity that she was. And so as a result, Joe had approached me and asked if I would want to work in the cellar year round as an assistant. I was like, well, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. Yeah, let's do it. And so that was the next role. So that started in 2024. We picked up.
How is it different being there full time?
As a full-time position, the catered lunches were not there full time. I had to bring my own lunch all of a sudden. What the heck? No.
That's rough.
It was rough. No, but it is working in the cellar in the winter time, spending a lot of time indoors. It keeps you out of the rain, and it is cool in the summertime. You don't see the sun much sometimes, but I think my skin thanked me for that at times too. I think a lot of bottling. There's a lot of bottling days where I think at Left Coast they produced a lot of the white Pinot, no skin contact Pinot, and produced in a way that is minimal color as well as a white wine. So there's a lot of bottling, but that wasn't so bad because you got to work with the vineyard crew came in, and I think I was one of the few or only people in the cellar who also spoke Spanish. So that was an advantage for me to be able to actually communicate with the bottling crew. Not the bottling crew, the vineyard crew, who would sometimes some people would come in and work on the bottling line. Because it is kind of a surprising thing how a lot of how widely Spanish is spoken in the fields, and that there is sometimes, perhaps oftentimes, a language barrier between the people who actually work the vines and are putting their hands on the vines, pruning the vines, and treating them. If there's a language of the barrier that can be there, can be advantageous to have somebody who can actually explain it in detail and articulate what we're doing and why we're doing, and like the details and the specifics. That and working salary was a bit of a difference too, which I later found was something to be negotiated, as business dealings are, worth negotiating. So there was that, and having to negotiate for paid time off as well was something which I hadn't had to do much in my professional career prior. I think because working with either Forest Service or for the state, there's not much negotiation to be had. I guess in the restaurants you can kind of negotiate, but nobody wants to pay a line cook much money. If you do, you get maybe you can vouch for $1 more an hour or so. So that was something for me to negotiate that and to try and figure is this reasonable? Is this what is a good amount of days for PTO? And trying to navigate all of that. So that was a bit of a learning experience for myself, I would say.
So, with the work now, what are the parts of the year that you enjoy? What do you enjoy doing outside of harvest?
Outside of harvest, I really enjoy table tennis. One of my other passions. I think if I could go back and do it again, I would have joined the club at OSU and tried to go on to at least compete out of state, because I think I could. I can backspin, topspin. I can play the table. I do enjoy the pouring of wine for people. One of the experiences I had the privilege of pouring tastings at the North Albany Co-op for Left Coast on a couple occasions, which was really fun for me because it's kind of my weakness, I guess, in the wines was actually talking about them, because I could explain the processes and the chemistry, but the tasting notes and things like that, and establishing the palate to pick up on those was a familiarity I had not had much of. Tasting rooms, we'd go to tasting rooms every once in a while. Advantageous if you work in the industry, because oftentimes tastings are waived, tasting fees are waived, and bottle purchases are much cheaper. So that was really fun for me, getting to do the tastings at the North Albany Co-op. And it was sometimes not many people came up to taste, but it was also really fun for me because I think our distributor, the representative, was named Amy Mitchell, I want to say was her name. She was the one that got me set up, and she was the distributor or the representative for Left Coast at the time. I don't know if she still is, Mitchell Group. But she grew up in Sweet Home, and my dad's side of the family, my dad's mom's side of the family, they are from Sweet Home. And so we made that connection, and then she told me, she's like, oh my God, as I was approaching, it was like, this guy looks just like Lucas. I was like, who's Lucas? Oh, Lucas Hufford. And then I quickly realized, oh my God, Amy, you know more about my cousin than I do, that side of my family than I do. Because, she'd talk about how her and Lucas Hufford, who's, I guess, a cousin of mine, who I've probably met at some point in my life, but she grew up there, and they own the Cedar Shack on the highway there in Sweet Home, and she would talk about stories of how they, in high school, they would go call in on their, not VHF, but the CV radio. They'd call in their orders to the Cedar Shack over lunch in high school and go run down and pick it up and all that. So that was kind of fun, and it was cool to see Amy and represent Sweet Home. It's good.
Somebody has to.
You got it. It's the next bend. We don't want to admit it, and I don't want to see it, but it's development has a way of working. But yeah, outside of harvest, in regards to wine,
Now that you're working it full time, what else do you enjoy about it?
well, I actually don't work in wine full time currently. I do work part time with Isabel and Jess Miller of Dasha and Jess Miller Wines. I help them out with some small scale vineyard management stuff, mainly weed whacking, which has also rapidly become a passion of mine. It's hard because like once you start, you see something, you're like, I just want to take a weed whacker to that. I just want to. So I do a bit of weed whacking for them, and I've been learning a lot through them too in regards to vine management, and just learning from them how they care for a vineyard. They like to apply a lot of organic practices to their management, and they like to focus a lot on the community aspects of the wine, getting people involved in every step of the way, even if it means wrangling people out to help pick on hot summer days when there are people who are more so just accustomed to drinking the wines. They like to get their hands dirty sometimes, and so it can be a community aspect like that. And so that's been very helpful for me anyway, to have those connections and that network, to be able to learn and to pick up work at the same time.
What comes next for you?
What comes next for me? Well, I'm going back to Berlin. My friend is getting married, and he asked me to be the best man in his wedding.
Nice.
So back to Berlin for der funky beats. I'm gonna go try and get into Berghain. No, but I am planning on going back to Berlin here in September, and I want to try to see if I can't bump down to taste some more wines or hop down to Burgundy to see how they do things down there. I've heard the French can speak critically of American wines sometimes and have different approaches, and so I think it'd be fun to see. I don't speak much French, but yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be neat to see, and I think it might I don't know, kind of reinstill or build on top of the appreciation and understanding that I have for viticulture, vineyard management, approaches in winemaking, and community aspects of it. I've heard that in Burgundy anyway, I think this is what I heard, that there's a lot more small-scale winemakers that don't produce high volume, but small batch, and I think that'd be fun for me. And so I think we'll do that, and then I don't know. Hopefully I hear back from this position with ODFW out of Port Orford, and I hope to be doing that over the winter. If not, I guess we'll figure something out.
Do you have any long-term ambitions in the wine industry?
Long-term ambitions in the wine industry. I do want to keep making or continue making wine at some capacity, even if it is just 2 carboys or so at a time. Just because that was one of the I don't know if I'd say it's a cementing aspect, but something that really was fascinating for me was in the first vintage I worked, Kelly. She allowed me to set aside a small carboy's worth of Pinot Gris juice. We'd pressed off some Pinot Gris to make some white Pinot Gris, and there was some extra, and so I asked her, like, what should we do with it? This is quality juice. Like, we're not just gonna dump it down the drain. So she tells me first, she's like, yeah, just fill the sample bottles with juice, and the interns can drink them when they're thirsty. So I was like, okay, I was kind of hoping for a different answer. But so I started filling the bottles. There's more than the bottles. So she's like, okay, you can put it in a carboy and have a project wine. I was like, sweet. So I had a project wine, and the only place to like keep it warm at the time off of glycol heating was in the restroom. So I had the carboy in the restroom because that was the only room that had a heater in it, which is kind of fun. Which is funny because one day I was cleaning out the bathroom, just like mopping it, and Peter Dredge comes up to me, he goes, "Cleaning your winery, I see," which is funny. So I think I want to keep making wine, at least in a small capacity, like that. And I think I'll try to keep staying in the network with some of the winemakers, whether Dasha or Jess, working with Isabel, Jess, or other people, trying to pick up work in vineyard work here and there. In regards to cellar work, I don't know, too many harsh chemicals for my liking personally to be working with. So I don't know if I would find myself back in that capacity in the wine industry. If I did, I think it would have to be an alluring kind of setup arrangement, where either it was very either smaller scale production, hands off, less exposure to sulfur and NaOH, and
with the ODFW part of things, do you have kind of a similar question? Do you have like long-term ambitions with that part of your work?
With ODFW and wildlife, I do. I think that work is one that I personally find am more welcoming to and more welcome to. Downside, it doesn't pay that much. It really doesn't, and like one of the I myself get kind of skeptical about the wine industry because I hear about the volatility, people getting let go, winemakers getting let go with short notice to minimal notice. There's turnover. It seems to be saturated at times, and supposedly there's a downward trend of people drinking less. And so I have been kind of skeptical of that, like, do I want to invest, my future into this? But then in like fish and wildlife too, it's, you see people who've worked in that and they're like, well, they get tired of doing seasonal work, seasonal positions, and the pay is also not as lucrative. Although the benefits of working for the state, I don't know, pros and cons. But
so if you could sort of design what you wanted to do, what would your like next big step be?
If I could design what I wanted to do, I feel like starting my own business might be a good move. I'd always been very wary of that. Because in some aspects I risk averse. Like, I don't like the idea of carrying on loans or debt. I was very reluctant to even go to university for that reason. I was like, why would I pay, tens of thousands of dollars a year to get an education, like, when you could like work and get education and get paid for it. So I was reluctant in that capacity, and then then you find out business loans are a lot more forgiving than student loans. So I don't know. I do feel like starting a business for myself might be a move, but what that would look like, I honestly don't know. If it is contract work at some capacity, I have been doing a bit of remodeling over the past 6-8 months, which has been good for me, helping my grandparents remodel the house they just moved into in Salem, which has been good experience for me. because I figure if/when I become a homeowner, it'll probably be a fixer-upper and we'll need work, and contractors can be expensive. Yeah. So I don't know what the future is. I don't know what the future. If I could design it at my own business, that's hard. That's tricky. I've always thought the idea of aquaculture and oyster farm was really neat, but that I'd worked at an oyster farm internship as part of my degree requirement. That was in 2021, and Oregon oyster farms. So if you haven't been, go to Oregon oyster farms, Newport, Yaquina Bay. Quality operation. But yeah, no, I don't know though. Aquaculture I think is important. Habitat conservation is important.
All the questions that I have for you today. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover today that you wanted to cover?
I would like to publicly denounce the Zionist colonialism that is happening in Israel and Palestine.
Okay, noted for the record. Okay, that's a good way to wrap this up. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your story with us today.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing the state park with us today. It's a very beautiful day at Erratic Rock. Go ahead and let you off the hook. Thank you so much.
Thank you.